Okay, moving right along. I think I'm going to install a couple of. I'm going to install a custom template from the marketplace that works with the Auto-Nav block and walk through how they did what they did, and and give it a little bit of attention. This is how you might build something like an accordion menu on your site. And if you're familiar with an accordion menu, it shows a certain level of navigation, and then when you click on a subpage, or a page, the subpages sort of slide out rather than are always visible. So it's a nice little animated effect. This add-on is an add-on found in our marketplace. I'm not explicitly endorsing it necessarily. I'm just saying that this is, I think, it was easier than us writing one for this training, and a lot of the, I think a lot of the principles are good ones. So if you need an accordion menu, definitely pick up Accordion Menu by Chris Waterston. I have it here. I'm going to install it in my site here. And this is not its own custom block. All this is a custom template for the Auto-Nav. Actually, I'm not going to mess around with the stack. I will just go into the sitemap. So here I'm going to make sure that all of the pages can be viewed. And then I'm going to go into custom template. And now you see this add-on has added a whole bunch of different custom templates, accordion menu ones. Since our site's pretty blue, I'm going to use the blue one. And there we go. So the first thing that you'll notice is this doesn't necessarily look that this some of the blue typography, the blue links in my site look a little bit funny with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore how that package works, and we're going to customize how it looks. Accordion menu blue. Now here you go. This is a nice example of how you can build a custom template that takes advantage of. You can build a custom template that takes advantage of CSS and JavaScript. So when you build a custom template and you don't just call it a file name.php, but you actually create a folder and put view.php inside it, you can add in CSS and JavaScript files, and whatever you place in a CSS directory and a JS directory will automatically be included in the header of the page. So that's how this person has built their accordion menu. They actually have some JavaScript and some CSS that loads automatically when this page is rendered. And so I want to make it so that this looks blue. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up their CSS. It looks like they are already doing that, trying to make it look white, but something about our site is taking over that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an important here, and we'll see if that fixes it. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a nav that has a blue background and starts at the top, and then as I roll over it, oh, I don't really want that, do I? So what I'm going to do here is add another important. There we go. Whew. So you can see when I'm mousing over anything that has a subpage, it is showing me all the levels of pages beneath it. Still nicely indented. And lets me click on any of those to navigate to that part of the site. And they've done this by creating a custom template that has all of this CSS as part of the custom template, which is a really smart way to do it. And then they include some jQuery JavaScript that when you're hovering over the elements in their menu, it is showing and sliding down and sliding up, which is certainly the way we would build it if we were building something custom for a site. And this automatically runs anytime this custom template is applied to a block. And then finally, we have the view.php page. And you can see as you look in here, a lot of this looks pretty similar to the Auto-Nav view layer. That's because it looks like they've copied and pasted the thing as part of their custom template, which is totally a smart way to go because it's a smart way to go because then you're getting all of the functionality that's people tend to you're getting all the functionality that people tend to associate with this block. So if you just built your own nav from scratch, you might forget to include the code that handles replace link with first in nav, for example. And they haven't done that. It looks like it actually looks a fair amount like everything is the same, which is great, except they've added an AM menu ID at the top, which is smart because that's what's triggering the accordion menu. And then underneath, they are adding a function called init menu, which is responsible for showing the menu, but only if your page is in edit mode, which is an interesting thing. So if I am actually editing the page, I can see the entire nav. If I'm actually editing the page, I can see the entire nav, which I think is smart. It basically means it's probably meant to keep it from triggering a whole bunch of times as I'm mousing over a page in edit mode. So if I exit edit mode, it's collapsed, and then when I mouse over it, it actually opens and closes, which is really smart. It's a really nice way to build something like this. And of course, as you can see, there's any number of additional things here. And I think there's a fair amount of functionality here that there's a fair amount of functionality in this that we aren't even covering in this particular, sort of this overview. So that is how you might build an accordion menu with the Auto-Nav, with just using the options that are available in the Auto-Nav. So, for example, if I just made a breadcrumb trail, let's go back to the option we had before. So what's nice about working from the Auto-Nav as a starting point is you can do all this custom presentation stuff, but the Auto-Nav still takes care of handling the data that populates the view. So since I've set this up to be breadcrumb, it will only show pages that lead up to the page that I'm on. But since it's a custom template, it still has the same behavior in terms of its view, which is it's a really nice decoupling of logic and presentation. And so before we move on a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit momentarily about how I'm thinking about this. I'm going to try to what I'm going to try and do right now, I think, is I'm going to try and build and I'm going to explore how one might build a drop-down menu from scratch. I was going to approach this with an add-on that we sell called Superfish, but I think I'm going to try. I think it might be more useful to use the Auto-Nav itself as a driver for this, and just try and experiment with all of you as my guinea pigs. So I will walk through how we might start to build a drop down with nothing but a custom template for an Auto-Nav. So what I'm going to first do here, I'm going to delete this block, and the first thing I'm going to do we've got ourselves a header template for the the nav up here. And this is actually, if you look at it, this is just another instance of the Auto-Nav block set to only show pages at the top level. And it has no custom template. So I'm actually curious as to how this blue is being shown. Okay, I think I figured it out. So as you might wonder, the all right, so this is actually how this has happened, how this is handled. The main container div for our theme is aware that there will probably be an unordered list within the header tag, and then it automatically applies a background color and padding and no border to it when you mouse over it. So this is an example of a theme controlling how an Auto-Nav might look. And so what we're going to do is we are going to build in some logic to a custom template to show subpages. And the way I'm going to do this, since it's not hard for us to view, is I'm going to add an Auto-Nav at the top level, and I'm going to show all subpages, but only for one level. And so what that's going to do is it's going to show my four top level pages, and then all of the subpages beneath it. And then what I'm going to do, I have a header menu that I could use, but it's not actually doing anything at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new custom template called drop down menu. And you'll notice I'm using a folder to do this so that I can eventually add in my own custom CSS and my own custom JavaScript. And so when I'm doing a folder, instead of naming it drop-down menu, I name it view.php inside drop-down menu. And I'm going to open this up. And instead of calling this side nav, I'm going to just call it nav. And then I'm going to give it, actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just call this drop-down nav. And I'm just going to give it a class of drop-down nav. And so then, in order to add in some custom CSS, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate view.php and call it view.css. You could add this to your theme. There's a number of ways to get this in there, but if you wanted to make sure that this was always only included, this was only included when you had a custom template with it applied to it in a page, this is a good way to do it. And so I have now an empty CSS, and I am going to apply my custom template. Drop-down menu. So nothing has changed, which is not surprising because I don't actually have any CSS in there. The first thing I want to do is I want to hide everything that is more than one level deep. That's because I only want to show the top level, and I want to keep the guys that are the UL tags that are in there. I want to keep them around so that I can eventually display them when I'm hovering over stuff, but I don't want to show them in the list. So here's what I'm going to do. Again, this is kind of a proof of concept, but it will probably show how to approach this type of problem. Okay, so why isn't this working? Let's see. There will probably be a fair amount of jumps into, oops, that's because I named it drop-down nav as opposed to drop-down menu. Okay, there we go. So now it's important to note, I'm still including those sub lists in there, but they're no longer showing up because I'm not showing them in my CSS. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to make this so that it gets rid of the bullets. That's very important. And I also want to get rid of any padding for the time being. Actually, let's not do that just yet. Actually, what I'm going to do, instead of doing float, I'm going to use something called inline block, which I like a bit better because it works like float, but it lets you still apply a lot more CSS to it and doesn't screw up the rendering of the rest of the page. So with that one line, we have built it so that we've built this to look a lot more like a drop-down menu because these things are not showing up on one line. And then let's keep working with this. I like the color from the live site, so I'm going to steal it for my nav. Ugh, that is not tremendously attractive. Helvetica Arial. Oh, I completely forgot the exclamation on the important. Okay, that's much better. I was very confused as to why that wasn't working. All right. Okay, so we have kind of an approximation of what the header nav looks like currently. It's not exactly the same, but we're not shooting for it to be exactly the same. And what we have here is the beginning of a drop-down menu. So now we probably have to switch into doing some JavaScript. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a file called view.js. This automatically gets run. It gets included in the header when as a JavaScript file when it's present for that custom template. And so what we're going to do is we're going to write a little jQuery. And if you work in concrete5 at all, working with jQuery is probably something you should get used to. You can obviously work with just general JavaScript, but we really, jQuery is pretty nice for a lot of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this so that all of the top level nav items, when you mouse over them, do something. First, I like to just test to make sure that everything is actually working. It appears to be working, which is nice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show any UL tag underneath it and see if that works. It did not appear to work. Perhaps that's because I'm not actually underneath the A tag, which that would make sense. No. Oh, it is display block. I just can't see it for some reason. Hmm. Okay, there we go. So now you can see that when I actually mouse over About, Contact Us and Guestbook show up. And when I mouse over Blog, Hello World shows up. Of course, it's definitely not styled correctly, and you want to make sure that they go away eventually. So, but what we already have something that is starting to work. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is we want to make sure that the any UL tags beneath our drop-down nav are actually styled quite a bit differently than this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to give it a fixed width. We're going to give it a border of something gray. And then we're going to display block. Okay, so now you can see we're starting to get something that looks a little bit more manageable. What is happening here? I'm looking into why my particular I'm looking into why this is adding padding to the left. It's because LI has a margin left. Okay. Ah, that appears obvious. Okay, so now we have something that looks pretty good. I'm going to change the way this looks a little bit. I'm just adding some more styling. Some pretty basic stuff. Okay, so now I actually have a drop-down menu that is eventually going to be styled pretty good. But I want to, instead of just showing it, that's not really going to work right. What I want to do is I want to show it at a particular spot. So instead of showing it, I want to place it at a particular spot on the page relative to where the item I hovered over is actually located. So, and Jquery actually has a nice way to do that. Since we are currently at the A tag in Jquery, what we want to do is we want to grab the position object. And I forget kind of what the position object actually stores. So I'm going to remind myself. It stores a left and a top. Well, that's pretty obvious, huh? So what that means is as I mouse over any of these, I actually know where on the page they are located and how far from the top where they need to go. And what's nice about this is that means that will stay constant. You know, wherever you put this nav, JavaScript will be able to figure out where you're at. And what's nice about that is it means that I can then tell my list element, don't just show up in the page where you happen to be. Let's give you an absolute position, but let's put you right, basically, uh, right where the right where the position actually is, and then top. Let's add. Let's do this a little differently. Okay. And then finally, now I want to actually show the guy. Oh, looks like I need to bump up my offset just a tiny bit more. Oh, that's perfect, actually. So at this point, you can kind of see that we have our drop-down menu starting to come together with just a little bit of JavaScript. When I mouse over about, it grabs the position of the thing that I moused over. That's what's happening right here, grabbing the position of the current anchor link. And then we find the UL tag that's inside that list, and we turn its position to absolute, and we figure out where to put it, and then we show it, rather than just showing it in the page. Of course, there are still some problems with this. You know, if I mouse over something else, I presumably want this one to go away. So what I'm going to do is anytime I mouse over this, I am going to find all UL elements inside it and hide them. Jquery really makes this just trivial to work with, which is just really nice. Now why? Oh, I suppose I'm going to test something right here. So what's actually happening is my I had attempted to make it so that only the top level list items would have this behavior, but that is apparently not really working exactly the way that I had hoped. So I'm going to, I suppose that's just because of this. I suppose I could try this, huh? Oh, that works a lot better. Okay, so to what was actually happening was it was still finding all of the list items in there, and that was not what I wanted. So now we really have a drop-down menu almost together. It's not obviously perfect. We probably want to, what would we want to do with this? You know, you could do a number of cool things. Since this is jQuery, you could add fade in on these things, as opposed to just showing them, which is kind of cool. You'd probably want to keep this blue active, which, you know, since this is actually done with the hover effect in CSS, you may want to do it a little differently. Maybe through JavaScript apply this class instead, so that when you mouse over a sub item, you keep it active. Let's try doing something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the anchor link and we're going to add a class of active nav item. And then we're going to go into our custom template, and instead of hover, we're going to move that out. Active nav item. And we're going to do it this way. So you see it still works, but it doesn't go away when I mouse off of it. It only, well, see, here's the trouble, it doesn't go away at all. So what we need to do, much like we hide all of the UL tags every time we mouse over something, we want to remove all the classes of all the classes that correspond to active nav item before we add it on to the currently active one. And again, there's probably more efficient ways of doing this in terms of optimizing how much JavaScript actually does with every mouse over, but that's sort of outside the scope of what we're working on. We're just trying to do something simple here. So that's kind of nice. We've made it so that this blue sticks around as opposed to going away, which I think is really nice. Another thing that might be kind of nice as well is removing this drop down when you mouse out of it for a while, but you know, that starts to involve messing around with JavaScript timers, etc., and it's kind of a pain in the butt. And finally, before I sort of move on to taking more questions and going through any questions you have, and then maybe and probably wrapping up, I'm going to experiment with just how well this works as a header nav in your site. So I'm going to delete this block, and then I'm going to go into the global area that's in the site-wide header nav, and I'm going to change this from showing no subpages to showing all subpages, but only one level of subpages. And obviously that screws up the current nav that's in there. But if I use the awesome new side nav that we created, I feel like the reason for this is, oh, not the side nav, the drop-down menu. That's what we want. Now, something interesting is happening here. Let's check out why it might be showing up this way. I feel like existing stuff, yes, I think the existing code that is in our header is conflicting with this in some way. So what I'm going to do in the theme that we are looking in, I'm going to find all of the I'm going to find all of the I'm going to find all of the header stuff that corresponds to a nav, and I am going to comment it out. Comment it out for the time being. And we're going to see if that helps. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten up some of the spacing because I don't really like the fact that there's this massive space between each drop-down item. I think that looks a bit better. Looks like I need to add a little bit of more stuff in here. Background color to my list so that it doesn't show up as transparent on top of this. And then it looks like I need to tweak the positioning for some reason. Again, this is going to be a bit of an inexact science until you work with the actual site that you're going to be on. That looks pretty good. And at this point, I've built a basic dropdown that I can use through my site that looks, you know, pretty similar to the dropdown that's actually in Greek Yogurt. You know, it doesn't handle sub levels. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't go away after a while on a page. It's very, very basic stuff, but hopefully it should get you started working with the Auto-Nav.